And a good morning, Eagles fans. This is Birds 365 with your Mac and Mac guys, John McMullen and Jody McDonald, as the countdown continues. 3 days and counting till the National Football League gets underway here in Philadelphia. It gets underway tonight, and the Dallas Cowboys will be playing, so we know the Eagle fans have rooting interest. We'll touch on that game today, but we are here mostly to talk about the Philadelphia Eagles. And I just found out something I didn't know. Johnny Mack is heading to Atlanta. I thought maybe you were doing this week's game from the couch.
I wish I was doing it from the couch. I wish I could do every game from the couch, to be honest with you. But no, I'll be in Atlanta for the big Nick Sirianni era opener. How big is that? It doesn't get any bigger.
Well, it's big enough. I don't know if the Super Bowl from a couple of years ago, I might say, was slightly bigger, but just me. All right, then let's start there. It is the beginning of the Nick Sirianni era. We go from the first press conference he held that had some people in this town kind of rolling their eyes, maybe even shaking their heads. He wasn't a master public speaker. He never had the spotlight turned on him the way it was that day. He's grown into at least that, his ability to get his message out there through the media, through guys like John McMullen and the like. He is at an advantage that other first-year coaches have not had, which is there is still limited media access, and a lot of stuff is done on Zoom, so it's not as pressurized as others. How do you think Nick Sirianni has grown just in his persona that he puts forth for the public, John Mack?
Oh, I think he's grown greatly, much more comfortable in his skin, much more comfortable in the environment. He's got to do it 3 times a week now, so you just get more comfortable doing it, speaking off the cup. So he's much better. I think he was really nervous at the introductory press conference, rightfully so. As you mentioned, it's not something you're used to. You talk once a week as a coordinator. And people know, by the way, when you're an offensive guy and you have an offensive head coach, it's like Shane Steichen here now. I mean, it's not the glaring lights, so to speak, on you. So he's gotten much more comfortable from that aspect. I do have to say, I thought Nick was pandering a little bit with the Phillies.
No,
yes.
No, you thought he was pandering yesterday?
Well, first of all, you could see the green sticking out. So he specifically went to put the Philly stuff on for the press conference, took it off. He was wearing a Donovan McNabb t-shirt for practice. Come on, Jody, that's complete pandering. But, if it works, it works. I was just saying, come on, Nick, take off the undershirt. We can see the green underneath. It's like a Christmas outfit. So there was some pandering. But, that's fine. You want to support the other teams. And I just thought it was goofy. And then I think it was kind of funny. John Clark asked him I think John was first, and he asked him about the Phillies gear, and he gave a quick, I'm a Philadelphia, and I support all Philadelphia teams. And then I think it was Reuben Frank, and it just struck me as funny because Reuben kind of asked, have you been getting enough sleep or something of that? And Nick laughed, which I thought was funny, kind of endearing, and I think that shows you how much more comfortable he's gotten in the role, even though he hasn't even coached his first game. But it's been so long since he was introduced to where we are now. It's just much more comfortable.
I'll tell you what, even though John McMullen and Jody McDonald, you started it, I follow along, are going to get on Nick Sirianni's case for pandering. Given the chance to do so, I would do it 100 out of 100 times.
Oh, it's a good plan. Yeah, I'm with you there.
Even though guys like us are going to roll our eyes and go, yeah, a little obvious here, Nick. Yeah. There's a good percentage of the fans that won't either pick up on it or won't care. They'll just love the fact that Nick is also a Phillies fan, and he called himself, I'm a Philadelphian now. This is the easiest city on the planet to pander to. They eat this stuff up hook, line, and sinker. So even if there are going to be some that are going to point to it, go, yeah, right, Nick, we're buying. How many Philly games have you been to? Next thing you know, you're going to be a season ticket holder? Stop, please.
By the way, as a larger scale, I've never understood that. people come from all over the country. I remember Jalen Hurts. Jalen had one of his early press conferences wearing an Astros hat. He's from Houston. He's from just outside of Houston, and people are making a big deal. I'm like, these people, these players come from all over. They don't. Poor Donnell Pumphrey. He's an example. He loves the Dodgers, loves the Lakers. Was always wearing their kind of gear, and obviously he didn't perform on top of it. And he would just, that poor kid, he was the nicest kid in the world. He would just get destroyed. Whereas Allen Iverson can get away with wearing the Yankees hat because he was Allen Iverson. But yeah, I've never understood that. I'll never understand that. They come from all over the country. They have different loyalties. The key is the loyalty on the football field. And when the football team is paying, you're loyal to that football team. We talked about Corey Clement. Hey, Dallas gave Corey Clement a job. He's an adult. He's going to go to Dallas.
Here's the hypocrisy in the way some fans handle people rooting for teams that aren't the Philadelphia Eagles. If you're a Philadelphia Eagle player or whatever, if a guy come in from another town, as you pointed out, they grew up elsewhere, fan of somebody else, they want to continue to be lower. How dare you? You are now a Philadelphian. You're in Philadelphia. You must adopt, like Nick Sirianni, all Philadelphia teams. But you get a guy like Rasheed Wallace, who goes elsewhere, is playing for another team. He wears his Flyers jersey to any event. And, well, by your laws and rights, he should become a Red Wing fan. Because if you move to the town, then you must jump on the bandwagon. You must be loyal to the hometown team. You want Rasheed Wallace rooting for the Red Wings? I don't think so. People love the fact that he still wears his Philly colors wherever he goes. Can't have it both ways. Can't say, you got to jump on the bandwagon. You're now a Philadelphian. But when somebody leaves Philadelphia, no, you got to stay loyal to Philadelphia. That's just dumb.
Mike Trout is the best example of that. Obviously, a huge Eagles fan, has stayed a huge Eagles fan, is a season ticket holder for the Eagles still. But I always got a kick out of the fan base. Oh, Mike Trout's coming to Philadelphia at some point because he's an Eagles fan. I mean, that's not how it works. And obviously that hasn't manifested itself with Mike, who's very happy, by the way, where he is because of obvious reasons. Yeah, I've never understood it. I mean, look, I applaud guys who, outside the sport you're in, Mike Trout, Rasheed Wallace, as your example, I applaud those guys who keep their Philly roots and South Jersey roots in the case of Mike Trout, and they wear on their sleeve their loyalty to the Eagles, the Flyers, whatever. Yeah, I mean, in the sport, who's paying me the most? Right. Occasionally you'll get a little bit of a hometown discount. And by the way, to profess loyalty, much lower level player, Will Parks, Philly kid, comes back to play with the Eagles, had better offers in Detroit and Minnesota, took a little bit less money. Now we're talking about, probably 1.25 million, maybe took 1.1. I forget his contract. Took a little bit less money to come to Philadelphia to play for his favorite team from growing up, and they cut him mid-season. I mean, come on, people.
And I actually thought he was going to be a contributor here. I had good reports on him from the scout that I talked to, who said he's a Philly kind of guy and a Philly kind of player. He plays real hard. Just needs to play a little smarter. I remember the scouting report I got him, but I was pretty enthused about him coming back. And yes, the Eagles did move on from him rather quickly. Between you and I didn't think it was a bad move because I didn't think Will Parks had played very well.
Did not play. I saw it early in training camp. They put him in the slot. He couldn't cover anybody, and I said, it's not going to work. But as far as the loyalty aspect, there is no loyalty.
No, there's none. And that's the way. Believe it or not, that's the way it should be. Despite Nick Sirianni's attempted pandering yesterday, the fact that he's now a born and bred. It's Philly red blood flowing through him.
Born and bred Philly red blood from Western New York.
Which, there you go.
I'd love to see the Sirianni family. They're probably all Yankees or Mets fans.
All right, this is his debut on Sunday, and I just felt they needed to give him some credit for becoming a better communicator. He talks a lot about communicating with his players. Well, he needed to upgrade his communication game with the fans of Philadelphia in his media sessions that he has, and I think he's done a good job with that. One thing we absolutely don't know, if we know this much about Nick Sirianni's total package, it's about play calling. He is on the record as saying they didn't show much in the preseason. They didn't want to show much in the preseason, that they don't want anyone to know what they're going to do, what their tendencies are going to be. Okay, fine. So we're going in blind, looking at Nick Sirianni, the play caller, on Monday and on Sunday. And yes, it's the first of 17 games. We don't think he's going to spill his bucket here in game number 1 and show us everything he has up the sleeve. How confident are you that Nick Sirianni is going to be an above average play caller?
Boy, I'm going to go 50-50. I hate to hedge, but I mean, I have no idea. You know, I just talked about the press conference. And I told you the first 2 questions, I was number 3, and I got down to the substance and the fact that I wanted to hear about his game planning process. You know, when Doug was here, he would sort of hand things out. He would give third downs to a coach, red zone to a coach, 2-minute to a coach, you know, running game, vast majority, and they would come together and put it all together and come up with a game plan. So I asked Nick basically if he had a similar type thing, and he said no. He's going to call the game, and he said it's going to be really hard for me to hand anything out without having his hand on it. So he's going to be engulfed in this thing. It's his game plan. It's his game play calling. And I've always thought this was a counterintuitive approach, and I always tell the story, Jody, because I talked to Tom Coughlin about it. I never understood it because I've told you in the past, I'm a big fan of CEO coaches because I think the job is so big. You have so much to manage. You can't focus, especially as a rookie head coach, on just play calling, which is bam, bam. People don't realize if you've ever been on the field for an NFL game, 40 seconds, that comes quick, man. And you got to go. You got to have something in the communication cuts off at 15 seconds. So you got to be ready to go, and that means you got to be thinking a play ahead, sometimes 2 plays ahead. And when you're focused on that, how could you be focused on other things? That's always been my thought process. So I asked Tom Coughlin about it because when there are CEO coaches, and Tom was one of them later in his career, it's always later in the career. It's always they start out as an offensive coach, calling the plays, defensive coach calling the plays, and then they graduate to the point where they become CEO type coaches and they feel comfortable enough. So I asked, why is that? It seems like it should be the opposite to me. And Coughlin said it can't be because you got to put your imprint on the building. You got to make sure that everybody's on the page that you want to be on. The last thing you want to do is hand over such an important part to somebody that's not 100% behind your vision. So you have to establish your vision before you can go in that direction. And I said, that makes some sense. That made some sense to me. But I still look at rookie head coaches, especially rookie offensive coaches as play callers. Look, that's why they got the job. So they have to do it. But man, he's got a lot on his plate. And he talked about this collaborative process, and that's why I asked the question. And he talks about it, and he said everybody's involved, but he's not handing anything out. Is that really collaborative? I don't know.
I am 100% with Tom Coughlin on that. I wouldn't want to hire a head coach who's never been a head coach before, who said to me, yeah, you know, I'll be a CEO head coach. We'll get someone else to call the defense, and I'll oversee everything.
Yeah, but can I jump in real quick?
Yeah,
you're acting like it's passive. I'm not saying you have to. You're passive.
Oh, it's absolutely passive.
I'm saying
as a first time, you've never been a head coach before in the National Football League. Your first chance to be a head coach. You're passing off one of the football side's responsibilities off what you're hired, and that's not passive. Of course it is.
I think you can step into an office and say, "This is dumb. The way this has been dumb and done in these over the years is dumb," and put your vision down and say, "This is the way it should be done." And I think you can come off the opposite of passive. I'm not saying you're not right. You can come off as passive if you hem and haw and say, I don't know if I can call plays in the NFL. I want. Yeah, that's very passive. I don't want somebody like that, but somebody with a vision and saying, look at Bill Belichick, look at Pete Carroll, look at these CEO type coaches, Tom Coughlin, who've had so much success in Super Bowls. Why is this done this day? People always talk about innovation, but then they sort of morph back into groupthink. Well, this is the way it's done. You're hiring an offensive coach. He's got to do that. No, it's what I loved about Chip Kelly. Chip Kelly gets crucified here, and he should, because he never adjusted to anything in his life. But I did like when he said, he would tell people who came in, look, don't tell me we do it this way because we've always done it this way. Tell me why we do it this way. I love people who think like that. I honestly do.
I got no problem with that line of thinking, but you're hiring a guy. Please, John, if it happens in your lifetime, my lifetime, my daughter's lifetime, I'd love to give that person credit. What general manager / owner is going to hire a guy because he's got vision about how an organization should be run? Are you kidding me? They're going to come in and tell you, it's been done wrong all these years, and here's how I would do it. You're basically stepping into the general manager's chair. And, oh, by the way, general manager's got to be the one who's going to hire you. That's not happening. You can have this pie-in-the-sky vision of how it could best happen.
Well,
there's no chance of happening. None.
I agree with you. But, again, I'm talking about a league. I'm talking about a league and an industry obsessed with innovation. And I think it's ironic because they're so closed-minded. And they do. You're right, 100%. It's not going to work. I agree with you. I do agree it's pie in the sky. I just think it's dumb that people can't think outside the box and say, well, this is the way it's always been done, so this is the way it has to be done. And then you have all these coaches who do get into the building, who do establish their vision, who do become great coaches. And then that's the role they go because they want their finger in every part of the pie. And you don't correlate it to, well, guess what? If Bill Belichick went in that direction a little bit quicker, he probably would have been great a little bit quicker, and so on down the line. But I'm 100% with you. It's not going to happen, especially with nobody who hasn't proven himself, because the league doesn't think that way. And the league doesn't think that way because they're afraid to think that way, and because they will get crucified. It's the same thing. But Joe Banner will always say that's what the Eagles did with Andy Reid. That's what the Eagles, Jeffrey Lurie will say that's what the Eagles did with Jeffrey Lurie. They loved his vision. They loved Sirianni's vision. Well, if you love his vision, don't give me his vision because it fits into a preconceived mold that somebody has to have. That doesn't make sense to me. Well, that's all I'm saying.
Part of his vision is the ability to call plays. That's
but what I'm saying is Nick Sirianni's grown up in this industry, in this profession, where that's the way you do things. That's all I'm saying. That's the way he has to think that way. There's no other option. I'm not saying, and by the way, I'm not saying Nick Sirianni doesn't want to call plays. He wants to call plays. He wants to call plays so much he doesn't want anybody else involved. He's going to do the whole game plan himself. He's not even going to piecemeal stuff out and say, hey, you come up with this, you come up with this, you come up with this, and then I'll filter it into the game plan. No, he's going to do everything from the ground up. And look, I'm not saying he doesn't want to do it. He wants to do it 150%. I'm just saying there's a better way to do it. That's what I'm saying.
And I disagree with you. The better way to do it is to grow into the job. Just saying I have a vision and then passing off a major piece of responsibility doesn't prove to me you deserve to be a head coach in the National Football League. If you're a first-time coach, you kind of got to earn your stripes. yes, the team is making the decision to hire you, but then when you get in that position, you got to kind of earn it. It isn't just you're given the entire power the day you're hired and you've never been a head coach in the league before. Prove that we made the decision correctly and that you deserve this job, and part of that is by being a good play caller.
Here's where I'll also go on this avenue. The titles are wrong in the modern NFL. The titles are wrong because when you have, for instance, an offensive head coach, and we just went through it with Doug Peterson and Jim Schwartz, you call them the head coach. You're not the head coach. He's the offensive coach. Jim Schwartz is the defensive coach. Right now, Nick Sirianni's the offensive coach. Jonathan Gann is the defensive coach. All around this league, you have guys. Sean McVay, I used to. He's the guy, right? He's everybody. That's what everybody wants the next Sean McVay. You had a cup of coffee with Sean McVay, you get an interview. You parked his car, you get an interview. You're a step back coach, his get back coach, you get an interview. You've been around, you've been in his ethos, you get an interview in the NFL. Everybody wants the next Sean McVay. You go back to season 1 with the Los Angeles Rams. He didn't even pay attention when the defense was on the field. Wade Phillips was the defensive coordinator, being brought in to be the defensive head coach. He didn't even pay attention. He would go to the offense, sit down with the quarterback on the bench. At times, he would have his back to the field. That is not a head football coach. You know, we always talk about game management decisions. We had Ryan Paganetti on the show. You're going for it on 4th down. Are you going to go for this 2-point conversion, vice versa? With an offensive coordinator, that stuff. Game management as far as timeouts. Oh, why is Andy Reid calling that timeout at this time? When you're so focused on the next play call, on this and that, how are you going to manage the game? That's why I like CEO coaches. That's why I've always liked CEO coaches. And that will never leave me. And nobody can tell me that Bill Belichick doesn't have a firm. Now, he's done it for a long time. Obviously, a lot of it is experience. But he goes down the route. He goes down for a reason. And they always called us a copycat league, Jody. You've heard that for years and years and years. Why don't you copy the best? Why don't you copy the best then?
Right, but didn't Bill Belichick start as a guy who, when he first got his first job in Cleveland,
everybody did. But he learned.
Then why would you want to change that? Why would you want to do it differently than the way it went with Belichick?
Because
you start on one side of the ball and you graduate to becoming a CEO head coach. Nobody starts as a CEO head coach.
I get it. You're focused, and I understand why. I agree with you. Let's stipulate to that. Nobody starts as a CEO head coach. I agree with you. I stipulate to that. What I'm saying is I don't agree with that sentiment. I don't agree with let's close the door. Let's not talk about it because that's the way it's always been done. That's how you get kicked out of Chip Kelly's office. That's the way it's always been done. It's not an answer to me. Tell me why it's done that way. And why it's done that way is because it's always been done that way. It's not the right answer. I'm sorry.
John, I'm just giving you what I would do, how I would look at it, what my thought process would be if I were the owner of a football team. Not the Philadelphia Eagles, not the Dallas Cowboys, not the New York ex-NFL team. Make it anytime, any place, anywhere. I'm an owner and I'm hiring a guy. I'm not hiring him as a first-time NFL head coach because he's got a vision of a CEO coach. I'm not. You have to earn being a CEO coach. You need to prove to me that I've made the right hire for you as my head coach of my National Football League team.
I'm saying to you, if I'm the owner of this team and you're my general manager, and I'm saying to you, okay, we got to get a head coach, and you come to me and say, we can't look at this guy because he's got this vision because that's the way it's always been done. That's where I'm shutting you off.
Who's saying it's because it's always been the way that it's done?
You just said that. We can replay it. It's going to be on JAKIB Media. I did not say that.
What I said was, and I'll repeat it, if I'm an owner, I'm hiring a first-time NFL head coach. He's never been a head coach before in the National Football League. It's a pretty risky hire. When you're hiring a guy who's never done something before, you need to have some criteria as to why you're hiring him. One of those criteria for me is, as an owner, he needs to prove he can do the job. He has to have a quality.
But I stipulated to the fact it's never happened before. That's what stipulation means. I get what you're saying. You're not getting what I'm saying. I'm saying that's not an answer to me. This league prides itself on innovation. This league, Jeffrey Lurie, we got to be innovative. We got to be ahead of the curve. We got to do this. We constantly have to be in front of everybody else. And then you're going to come back and say, I'm not going to look at this because it's never been done before. That's my problem, Jody. That's not what you're getting. I agree. It's never been done before. I agree. Nobody's got the balls to do it. I agree with everything you're saying, except for the fact that it shouldn't be talked about just because everybody's afraid to do it. That's my only point.
Okay. Here's where we differ, John. You think you can determine whether a guy is going to be viable as a head coach through his interview process, because he's going to tell you that he's got this great idea on how to lay out the football team as a CEO head coach and hand off responsibilities to other people, and then the organization is going to run like a top. As an owner, and it doesn't matter to me one iota whether anybody's ever done it anyway before. Here's how I would do my business. I'm giving you the job, but I'm giving you it on spec. You need to prove to me, and just a vision isn't enough. I need to see you actually do something on top of that, and that would be on one side of the ball and be able to call plays. That's what I would use, not because every team has ever done it this way before in the National Football League. I need something I can sink my teeth into a month, 6 months, a year, 2 years into my hiring you as my head coach. I need something to judge for myself whether I pick the right guy or not. And for me, the top priority would be, there's a lot of things that I would factor in, but the number one would be, on what side of the ball are you doing this, and how good a job are you doing that? That's what I think would be the best criteria that I could use to decide whether the guy should be my head coach or not. And it's got nothing to do with the National Football League has done it this way for 100 years before. I'm starting from scratch in my mind and making my decision. How can I best analyze whether I've hired the right guy or not? Well, for me, it would be, how good can he be calling plays on one side of the football or the other?
Well, you're right about, first of all, let me say two things. There's no guarantee that you come into somebody's office and lay out my vision, my plan, and I want to be a CEO coach from day one. I'm not saying you're going to be a success by any stretch of the imagination. You're either a good coach, a bad coach, an indifferent coach, and nobody's going to know. Nobody's going to know from an interview. You're right. However, that's how you hire guys. In theory, that's where they swing you. That's why you're choosing the guy. So let's use the Eagles as an example. They interviewed 10 different people. If 9 of them come in with the same plan and they go, well, Nick Sirianni's the best of the 9, and the 10 guy comes in with my plan, doesn't even have to be my plan. Could be a different plan, could be whatever. Could be, and he's the most impressive, but you're not hiring him because he doesn't have the same mentality. I'm an offensive guy, I'm a defensive guy, I'm that, I'm this, I'm this, I'm that. That's where I think we differ. If the guy's the most impressive and you're going to say, well, this guy's really stinking impressive, but this has never been done before, I'm gonna scratch him off the list and take number 2 because he's the best of everybody else. He's the best of the groupthink guys, and that's more comfortable. You're missing out. That's all I'm saying.
And my question to you would be, how can that person be the most impressive if their first thing they're going to say is, well, I'm going to pass off the most important responsibility on the team, play calling?
Well, you're calling it the most important.
I would be tough. But, in my own mind, it would be very difficult for me to wrap my head around, and that guy is the most impressive out of the 10 guys.
The most important responsibility for a head coach in the National Football League is to win football games by hook or by crook. Not the most important thing is calling plays. How are you going to win football games? You might win them by special teams one week. You might win them. It doesn't matter. Your job is to win football games. That's number one, and that's way ahead of the most important responsibility you have. It's not play calling. It is not play calling. It's not even close to being play calling. The most important responsibility, Nick Sirianni, we have to agree on that, Jody. It is not play calling.
Here's where we don't agree. The 10 guys that you used as an example, 9 are guys who are going to choose one side of the ball. The 10th is not going to. He's going to lay out his game plan as the CEO coach. I'm assuming all 10 of them have never coached in the National Football League before, right?
Well, we're talking
about 10. We're talking about 10 first-time starters who have never been head coach. Because anybody who has been a head coach, you're right. Winning and losing is the most important thing. You build a track record. So you're a track record head coach in the NFL. That makes you a tougher comparison against anybody else. But if the 10 guys are all first-time starters and they've never coached before, well, they're all even. No one is ahead of the other. That 10th guy you said is more impressive. No, he's not, because he hasn't coached any games. He hasn't won any games. He's not more impressive than any of the others because they haven't coached or won or lost any games. So that's where I'm starting from. They're all, when it comes to being able to win or lose games, there's nothing for you to look at other than their plan, other than their word, other than their vision. There's no analytics to show whether they can or can't win games. That's why I say there's something, you have to be able to sink your teeth into something. And I would say the ability to and the desire to take over one of the two sides of the ball would really move
I
me.
wish we had Benny Serrato on today. We're going to have Martin Frank. I'm going to try to get Randy Mueller on. I'm going to try to get Joe Banner. I've been trying to get Joe Banner on. Joe, come on the damn show. But I will say this. There is an old adage amongst general managers in this league that says, and you've heard this, Jody, I know you've heard it, because if you're hiring a scheme, you're doing it wrong. Joe Banner has told me in the past, and you know, he's very proud of the Andy Reid hire, and he should be. I mean, the guy's going to the Hall of Fame, first ballot Hall of Fame coach, and he was not on the NFL's radar. No. A little bit understated. He was on the NFL's radar, but he wasn't a high-profile candidate, very much like Nick Sirianni. People knew him, but, you know, in the public, he wasn't very well known. So he's very proud of that hire. And he always talks about, you know, the first thing with Andy Reid that impressed him was, who's your staff going to be? Who's your staff going to be? So my only point to you is, even when they do hire the way they do hire, the most important part isn't play calling. It isn't, Jody. It isn't. And we can get your own mind. And I know this, and I ask you because Vinny's your friend. You know, I talked to Randy, you know, ask Vinny, ask Randy, ask Joe. They're all going to tell you the same thing. I'm very confident with that.
Right. But here's the problem. And I had Jeff Lurie on my radio show shortly after Andy Reid was hired. And he extolled the virtue of Andy coming in, that he had binders, individual binders. Yeah. For each of his coaching hires, every position, every responsibility they were going to have, that he was going to lay it out and he was going to be the guy in control. I remember doing the interview. It was 20 plus years ago, and I still remember like it was yesterday, me and Mac now talking to Jeff Lurie. Andy Reid called the plays. Andy Reid came in and wasn't a CEO.
Oh, I know.
He had a lot of CEO responsibilities, and he took it very seriously. But when given the chance to go, and I'll be a true CEO coach, and get both an offensive coordinator and a defense coordinator and hand off play calling to him. And he said, no, I don't think so. I'm going to be calling plays.
I know.
It just goes to make the point that it's an important thing for a first-time head coach to do, to prove that he deserves the job, keep it long enough, and become a Hall of Fame head coach like Andy Reid. I rest my case.
Jody, 20 minutes ago, I stipulated to that. I've stipulated to that. It was never going to happen. That's the way the NFL thinks. So I'm not going to give you an example of it going the other direction. I've already stipulated, not only has it not happened, it's never going to happen. So I don't know why you're trying to win that argument. What I'm trying to tell to you, that even in the environment we're in, the guys doing the hiring will tell you that old adage, if you're hiring a scheme, you're doing it wrong. They talk about leadership. They talk about managing people. That's a bigger part of the job, even in the environment we're in.
John,
the environment we're in.
John, what would you call hiring a guy who wants to be a CEO head coach before ever coaching a game in the league? You know what I would call it? A scheme. That's his scheme. His scheme is, I'm going to be a CEO coach. Why would you do that if you don't hire a scheme?
Well, now you're playing some about, okay, so I'll say football scheme. If you're hiring a football scheme, you're doing it wrong. That's what they say. Those aren't my words. If you're hiring a football scheme, you're doing it wrong. They talk about leadership. They talk about managing people. So you can talk about, yes, is trying to manipulate people a scheme? You can talk about it that way, but that's not what they're talking about. They're talking about football scheme. And they say if you hire a football scheme, you're doing it wrong. One of the things I love about Nick Sirianni, and I think he's going to be very good at, is and he said it again yesterday when he was talking about Jalen Hurts. And he said, if I love a play, if Shane Steichen loves a play, if Brian Johnson loves a play, and Jalen Hurts isn't comfortable with it, Jalen Hurts doesn't like it, we ain't going to run it. That's what he said. I think that is a really, really positive sign. Where you have, and I always tell the story with Brad Childers, who was once an Andy Reid lieutenant. And Brad Johnson was going to be the starting quarterback when he went into Minnesota. And Brad had obviously won the Super Bowl, come back. He was really excited about getting another opportunity to be a starting head coach in this league, starting quarterback in this league. And you mentioned those binders. That's what Brad Johnson was as a player. He was a very cerebral, very smart guy. Late in his career, he had neck surgery. Arm strength wasn't his deal, but he was really stinking smart. And he went into Brad Childress, and he had his binders of plays that he liked to run. And Brad Childress looked at him and said, Brad, when you become a head coach, you can run what you want to run. We're going to run what I want to run. That, to me, was the definition of a bad coach. That, to me, is the definition of what I'm talking about. Nick Sirianni, we've gotten off on this tangent. Nick Sirianni, I think, has a chance to be a very good head coach. One of the reasons I think that is because of his philosophy, and you've already seen it in Indianapolis with the different quarterbacks and the different schemes they've run because they've had different styles of quarterbacks. All of that is positive. I'm not blaming any of this on Nick Sirianni. That's the way the NFL does business. I stipulated that. They're going to continue to do business that way. I just think it's ironic that a league that constantly talks about innovation is not even open-minded enough to look at another way of doing things. That's all I'm saying, Jody. That is the whole point of this conversation.
And all I'm saying is, in as important a position as a head coach, I think that it would be overly risky to try and be the first. Just because you're first doesn't mean you're right. Just because you've done something that no one has ever tried before doesn't mean that it's going to work. I would not feel comfortable doing that if I were an owner to turn over my coaching responsibility to a guy who is ready to become a CEO head coach right away. You have to earn the job. Guys step into the National Football League. We talk all the time about Howie Roseman and how much he protects his draft picks and how much is already cemented into place by your resume, by where you're drafted. You can argue that that's stupid too, because you should just show up and earn it. And I think a coach can actually earn his stripes by calling plays on one side of the ball or the other, rather than just coming in with a grand scheme and plan that, because it's innovative, give me a shot to do it. No, I'm going to ask you to earn it a little bit.
Well, I'll say this, and this is last, and we'll move on because people are probably tired of us yelling at each other. But I agree with you. It's risky. No doubt about it. And that's why people aren't going to do it, because there is too much risk. And I will say, yeah, innovation is by definition new, but new isn't everything new isn't innovative. So, there's 100 ideas. One of them might be good, but I will say this. The Eagles have won Super Bowl championships, and they got it by being innovative and being ahead of the curve when it came to game management. And when it came to being aggressive, they were first. They were first, and they won. Now, you can be first, and it can blow up in your face and be awful, and that's more likely. than catching the bolt of lightning and winning the Super Bowl. But they only got one, and they did it by being different than everybody else.
And I am not anti-innovation. I am anti-CEO head coach being a first-time starter. That's an innovation I'll pass on. That's too risque for me. That's too far out there. And the Eagles did win a Super Bowl by continuing to be innovative, as you correctly point out, with a head coach who was hired and came in and said, I'm going to call the plays.
Again, we're back to the stipulation. It's never happened, Jody. So you're going to be right every single time. Nobody has hired a CEO head coach to start. So, yeah, I mean, you're always, if you're going to lean on that, you're going to be right. But that's not what I'm talking about. I already stipulated to that. My point is, if you're going to be open-minded, if you're going to look at other things, don't completely shut down other avenues, because that's the way it's always been done. It's my only point. And that's the only thing Chip Kelly ever resonated with me. I said, you know what? That guy's right.
And like I said, I'm open-minded for innovation, but there are some things that need to be earned, that need to be proved before you can get to an innovative level. And for our first-time head coach, that would be one for me. Show me you can be the man on one of the two sides of the ball. Then we'll talk about restructuring your staff. All right, John McMullen, Jordan McDonald, back and back, guys. Martin Franks are going to join us in hour number 2. We'll get back into the birds and the start of the 2021 season in Hotlanta on Sunday. Next here on Birds 365.
Hey, Eagles fans, if you're a subscriber to the JAKIB Media YouTube channel, you are already registered to win a pair of season tickets for the upcoming season. That's right, you could win a pair of season tickets for the upcoming 2021 season just for being a subscriber. If you're watching and you're not a subscriber, do it now. Subscribe to the JAKIB Media YouTube channel right now. What do you need to do? Subscribe right now.
As a hard-working American, you've never experienced how tough life can be until now. A catastrophic injury while working on the job. A personal injury from someone else's negligence. Turned away by other law firms in the region who didn't bother to learn your story. It's time to meet the Fritz & Bianculli Law Firm and managing partner Brian Fritz. Badly injured? Call the Fritz & Bianculli Law Firm. Find out why they say, we got this.
The International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local Union 98, is a proud sponsor of The Labor Show with J. Doc and Krause every Saturday night from 6 to 8 p.m. IBEW Local 98's highly trained and superbly skilled electricians are the best in the business, setting the highest safety standards in the electrical industry. So when you're planning your next industrial, commercial, or residential project, choose an IBEW Local 98 union contractor. Learn more at IBEW98.org.
The savoring taste of a good bag of beef jerky is so enjoyable at any time of the day, as long as you can find it. Here's what we suggest. Pure Bull Beef Jerky is our answer, and soon it will be yours. Locally produced in the Philadelphia region, this high-quality, healthy protein snack is easy to secure. Go to steersnacks.com, and you'll see hot garlic, tropical heat, Pure Bull dry rub, and our favorite, Huck and Fod. What's that? Huck and Fod. Go now to steersnacks.com.
I get scared sometimes.
Of a lot of things.
Joining in.
Decisions.
The dark.
The dark.
But I once heard someone say,
But as I always say,
it's okay to be afraid.
as long as you face the fear.
And keep moving forward.
Wherever you are in life, count on the name trusted in insurance for over 80 years. Independence Blue Cross.
On the field of life, First Trust Bank is there for you.
Champions on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Because Philadelphia dreams deserve a Philadelphia bank.
Back Welcome back, guys, here on Birds 365. The countdown is on. 3 days until the Eagles return for the 2021 season. J-Mac, we got info yesterday that the Eagles had, and you got to see it, not the beginning of it, but part of the Eagles practice yesterday. Your in-season limited ability to check out practice. A couple guys limited in Eagles practice yesterday, a.k.a. injury issues, and one of which was Brandon Brooks, which a lot of people who are expecting the Eagles to be improved off last year's 4-11-1 disappointment team are doing so banking on the right side of the offensive line being that much better than it was last year, which of course it should, if Lane Johnson and Brandon Brooks are back in the lineup. The Eagles won, as you just recalled for all the Joyous Eagle fans out there, the Super Bowl in 2017 because of innovation and aggressiveness, and those all were good traits. I'll tell you, it's just as much the fact that they kept the same offensive line together for basically every single snap all year long. Staying healthy at key positions is a key part of winning a Super Bowl as well. Well, we're not 100% sure that Brandon Brooks is going to fill that role because he's already downtime right before the first game of the season. Are we just like crossing our fingers that Brandon Brooks is going to be able to play all season long for the Eagles this year?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you are crossing your fingers, but I don't know what else you can do. Lane Johnson as well. I was told that Brandon is expected to play. It's more of a management thing from the training staff, trying to get him as healthy as possible to the game. So limiting his work a little bit during the practice week. But, you know, that's not a good thing in week one. You know, we went through the same thing last year. People forget Lane Johnson had the tightrope ankle surgery late in August, mid-August maybe. And they would say the same thing. We're going to manage. Lane's going to play. Week one shows up. They take the bus down, whatever train, I forget what they took, down to Washington. And ankle swells up and he can't play. And all of a sudden, Lane Johnson is out. And so it began as far as the offensive line and as far as the historic attrition. Yeah, I mean, over 30 guys who have injury histories that you're trying to manage to get to the game, that's a red flag for me, Jody. That is a red flag for me. But
it is. It should be. And it's the same for Rodney McLeod. Now, Rodney, we more understand because he hasn't practiced all year. He's coming back from a major injury, and we did see plenty of Brandon Brooks, at least out there on the field. Now, we would like to see more reps in practice and or in the games, but at least we did see him participating. We have not seen that with Rodney McLeod. His being limited yesterday kind of telltale something, as does your boy Darius Slay, who kind of hinted that doesn't look like Rodney's going to play week one. I'm guessing that was not something they wanted Darius to get into yesterday, but he did. If not Rodney McLeod, and it is looking more and more likely that he's not going to play, who's going to be filling that void?
Well, it's one of two players, but I will say, and I don't know if Rodney's going to play or not, but yeah, Darius Slay, as he likes to be called, created quite the kerfuffle, but I think it was more of he just didn't understand the rules. And by the way, this is an indictment of the NFL because even the players don't understand the rules. It's such an over-legislated sport. I talk about it all the time. But he thought because Rodney was on the PUP list that he had to miss a certain amount of games, not understanding that he's been activated off the PUP list. If he can play, he's allowed to play. He thought he wasn't allowed to play because he didn't understand the rules. So what Darius said, what Slay said, really doesn't matter. Now, what matters is he's limited. He's still wearing a bulky brace. Week one was always going to be, it was always his goal, but it was always going to be very close from a time frame perspective. December 13th, I think, is the exact date when he tore his ACL. It's generally a 9-month rehab. You can do the math. That would be September 13th. So, and you have surgery probably about a week after. So it's really a little bit longer. I don't know the exact date. I forget when Roddy had the surgery. But you're pushing it for week 1. So to be honest, if it were me and the Eagles have been as cautious as they have, and I see that knee brace out there practicing, I would be cautious. I would hold them out, but we'll see how the Eagles go about it. And then it comes down to Kayvon Wallace is out there practicing. Marcus Epps is out there practicing. What kind of player do you want against the Atlanta Falcons, who still have a veteran quarterback, Calvin Ridley, Kyle Pitts? We talk about Devontae Smith. I mean, if you think Devontae Smith is going to hit the ground running, you gotta think Kyle Pitts is going to hit the ground running. That is a very difficult player to deal with, at least on paper. What kind of flavor do you want if you're Jonathan Gannon? He's going to talk later this morning. Maybe we'll get a clearer indication, although I doubt it, because this team thinks secrecy is a big part of it. Bottom line to me is Jody, I don't think either of them are that great. So you got to cobble it together.
Understood, and we will probably not find out, as you said, till Sunday when they get out there on the field. I doubt your boy JG is going to tip his hand today. He seems smarter than that and playing his cards tight to the vest the way that he does. 2 other guys who were limited, no great surprise, Dickerson and Taylor, both of which Dickerson has never practiced and is still ramping up, is the phrase I like to use for the start of the season. Taylor did get plenty of good action in preseason. As a matter of fact, opened some eyes in training camp before he went down. When he comes back, what kind of role is he going to have? Is he going to be spotted just to earn it? Now we're back into the conversation of what is granted and what is earned. How is Taylor going to get himself back out onto the field?
Boy, he missed so much time. I don't know if it's going to be possible. I think the only way he gets himself on the field defensively, he'll be a big part of special teams, I think. But defensively, is if Alex Singleton and Eric Wilson and they don't play well. I mean, if they don't play well and we're 4 or 5 games into the season and you say, let's try Davion Taylor, I could see that being healthy. But those guys obviously are going to be on the field. And if they play well, and by the way, Alex Singleton, I think, is going to play well. Eric Wilson, I don't know. Good, very athletic player, good in pass coverage, but really poor in run support. So we're going to have to see how that looks. Maybe having Fletcher Koch and Javon Hargrave in front of him helps if they can keep blockers off him at the second level, and he can use that athleticism to flow to the football. But he would be the concern more than Alex Singleton to me.
And let me circle back one more time to the head coach, and we'll get another timeout here. And Martin Frank coming up in hour number 2, one of our favorite beat writer Eagle guys. Michael Robinson, remember him?
Penn State quarterback, fullback?
Former fullback from Penn State, NFL player turned media member.
Quarterback. He was a quarterback at Penn State. Then he turned into a fullback.
Right. Yeah. Big size guy. Maybe that's what happens to Jalen Hurts and becomes a superstar fullback. No, we want him staying a quarterback, as a matter of fact. But he was one of the first to step out and say, my sources are telling me not everybody is buying into Nick Sirianni's rah-rah act in Philadelphia, that there are already some people rolling their eyes with this new first-time head coach who seems to be an update and almost borderline goofy kind of guy, that it was rubbing some people the wrong way, which his sources are his sources. If he's not going to name names and he chose not to, you have to either take him at face value or go, yeah, if you're not naming names, I don't give a what you say. Has anybody else followed up and gone down that road? Michael Robinson and or any other media guy say that Nick Sirianni is not a guy who is being given respect in the Eagles?
No, that was early. So number one, I mean, as Michael, as a former NFL player, I'm very confident that that's what he heard. I mean, look, I said it from the start. There were players that thought this guy was goofy. I mean, now that he's gotten in the building and proven, and they're around him every day, they're calmed down. I mean, if you look at those first impressions, Yeah, to me, it was common sense. I mean, yeah, certain guys are going to say, "What the hell is this?" And then now that he's in the building, they see him every day. I think things have calmed down to the point he's like every first-time head coach, and the players are going to give him an opportunity. And the players are, they're going to be on board if you win. If they lose, they're not going to be on board. So I think we've gotten to that point. But I always said, because that was pretty controversial when Michael first said it, why wouldn't certain people in the locker room be questioning him after that sort of first impression? I thought it was understandable and natural, but I think we've progressed past that to the point of everybody's on board for week one. I mean, everybody's hyped up. That's, sort of like the baseball version of hope springs eternal, they always say in spring training. Football, week one. I always say, the worst time, Jody, Atlanta's a bad football team on paper. They're bad.
Yeah,
the worst time to play a bad football team is early in the season because they don't know how bad they are. They're fired up. They're saying Arthur Smith is going to do this and first-time head coach. You get them week 13 when reality is set in and everybody knows they stink and you got the human nature aspect and the snowball starts rolling down the hill, it becomes a little easier to deal with a team like that. So I think all of that was just natural. Yeah, there were certain guys that looked at Nick Sirianni and said, what is this guy? But now we're past that.
And here's where I guess I'm trying to make my point and/or call out Michael Robinson. I have a lot of fun doing the show with you today, doing Birds 365 with you, except maybe today because you got this plug up your ass about you got to be the first to create a CEO, first-time head coach, which I can't wrap my head around.
Not what I said,
otherwise,
but not
otherwise I love you.
Wrap your head around it. That's what I got my bug up my ass.
I love you, partner, even though you're just woefully wrong about this topic, but that's okay. Doing the radio show that I do and have been doing for 30 plus years, when you take a stance and make a statement like Michael Robinson did and had some gravitas, even if it made some sense that people were going to question him because he knew, he ruffled some feathers when he did that. And he had to know he ruffled some feathers.
Wow,
he felt that it was a big enough story that he wanted to put it out there. How about you address it now 3 months later or 2 months later, however long it's been since he ran with that? How about you go back to those sources and say, well, what do you think of Nick Sirianni now? Now that you have been around him for a couple of months, now that you have had a chance to see him coach, now that you have had a chance to see him deal with players one-on-one. Did I miss that Michael Robinson story that he has done his follow-up to the somewhat controversial story that he put out there? No. And there's a very simple reason why. He doesn't have to. He can just move on and talk about whatever the hell else he wants.
Well, I think that's a bigger indictment of media in general, the media landscape, than Michael, especially television media, especially.
Exactly. Not radio guys. If you're a radio guy like me,
well, you got to
go out that telephone number every single night. And if somebody wants to call up and say, Jody, here's what you said 2 months ago, I have to face it. I have to deal with it. I have to say, hey, you want to know something? You're right. I was wrong. A lot of these media guys just come in, they dive bomb, and then they disappear.
Well, it's also, if you talk about Nick Sirianni on January 26, whenever he was hired, somewhere in that range, versus wherever we are today, September, whatever. One thing could be true and another thing could be true. I hear what you're saying. I said at the time on this show, on other shows, I've said it in print, I think it was natural that certain people questioned Nick Sirianni and the goopiness. And I say today, a different thing. And I was right then. It was natural. And I'm right now. Guys have gotten to know him. Guys are more comfortable with him. I don't think the two things are mutually exclusive. I hear what you're saying about Michael Robinson, but that's just TV media. I mean, that's a bigger problem than Michael Robinson. I mean, you got the Stephen A. Smiths of the world, the Skip Baylesses of the world. You just throw crap out, and that's what they want. And by the way, there's certain radio stations that want that as well, and they have people throw crap out there, and they say, well, it'll be forgotten about the next day anyway. But yeah, if you want to be credible, if you want to be taken seriously, you got to add the context into it.
Oh, let me just defend my boy Stephen A., who I don't always defend because sometimes I think he's nuts. But he does have a partner every day. So if he says something controversial or off or incorrect or stupid,
no, they never go back. They never go back.
Oh, yeah, they do. Yeah, they do. I watch enough of those shows. Oh, yeah, they do. Because don't kid yourself. It's no longer going to be Max. Max decided to move on. Maybe Max asked Stephen A. too many questions about, remember when you said this? Maybe that's why Max is gone. I don't even know. But they do challenge each other. So Stephen A. does get called on the carpet. They all do a little bit. It's the talking heads who just don't take any responsibility for anything they say. Like I said earlier, they come in, dive bomb, throw down some napalm, and then they never address it again. My only point is, and you're right, he could be right and right, even though it's two different sides because time and things change.
Well,
all I'm asking him to do is address it. Since you're going to come in and throw napalm, there should be a follow-up.
I always, from a personal standpoint, I love the people that, and this is more of a media criticism. They'll go in and say, blah, blah, is this, they'll kill a player. They'll kill a coach, but they're not coming to the locker room. Well, nobody can come to the locker room. They're not coming to the press conference. They're not answering these guys. I got to do this stuff, and I got to show up and talk to Jalen Hurts. I had a one-on-one with Jalen Hurts last week. You got to keep your credibility. You can offer constructive criticism, but if you're there every day, it's a lot different than just throwing bombs and saying, all right, I don't got to see that guy.
Right, and that's why I think the job you do is more credible. All right, he's John McMullen. I'm Jody McDonald. We are the Mac and Mac guys. We got plenty of time left. Oh, full hour to play. We'll come back and hit on a couple more Eagle topics before we punch up. Martin Frank's going to join us to talk about the opener against Atlanta coming up here on Birds 365.
Hey, Eagles fans, if you're a subscriber to the JAKIB Media YouTube channel, you are already registered to win a pair of season tickets for the upcoming season. That's right, you could win a pair of season tickets for the upcoming 2021 season just for being a subscriber. If you're watching and you're not a subscriber, do it now. Subscribe to the JAKIB Media YouTube channel right now. What do you need to do? Subscribe right now.
As a hard-working American, you've never experienced how tough life can be until now. A catastrophic injury while working on the job. A personal injury from someone else's negligence. Turned away by other law firms in the region who didn't bother to learn your story. It's time to meet the Fritz & Bianculli Law Firm and managing partner Brian Fritz. Badly injured? Call the Fritz & Bianculli Law Firm. Find out why they say, we got this.
The International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local Union 98, is a proud sponsor of The Labor Show with J. and Krause every Saturday night from 6 till 8 p.m. IBEW Local 98's highly trained and superbly skilled electricians are the best in the business, setting the highest safety standards in the electrical industry. So when you're planning your next industrial, commercial, or residential project, choose an IBEW Local 98 union contractor. Learn more at IBEW98.org.
The savoring taste of a good bag of beef jerky is so enjoyable at any time of the day, as long as you can find it. Here's what we suggest. Pure Bull Beef Jerky is our answer, and soon it will be yours. Locally produced in the Philadelphia region, this high-quality, healthy protein snack is easy to secure. Go to steersnacks.com, and you'll see hot garlic, tropical heat, Pure Bull dry rub, and our favorite, Huck and Fod. What's that? Huck and Fod. Go now to steersnacks.com.
I get scared sometimes.
Of a lot of things.
Joining in.
Decisions.
The dark.
The dark.
But I once heard someone say,
But as I always say,
it's okay to be afraid.
as long as you face the fear.
And keep moving forward.
Wherever you are in life, count on the name trusted in insurance for over 80 years. Independence Blue Cross.
field of life, First Trust Bank is there for you.
Champions on three. 1, 2, 3.
Because Philadelphia dreams deserve a Philadelphia bank.
He is Johnny Mac. I am Jody Mac. That makes us Mac and Macworks 365 here on the JAKIB Media YouTube channel, and we just played it during the commercial. Quick aside. If you're watching this right now, and you saw John and I getting on each other's case in hour number 1, and you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, what the hell are you thinking?
Yeah.
If you're going to enjoy the show enough, enjoy JAKIB Media's YouTube channel enough, and you haven't subscribed, you're just foolish. All right, I'm going to. You're an idiot. Why the hell wouldn't you subscribe? It doesn't cost you a penny. It doesn't cost you anything. And if you're a subscriber, then you are eligible to win Eagles season tickets. How do you not just click on the subscribe button? Please. That's like John McMullen saying there needs to be an CEO, head coach, first time in the NFL.
By the way,
it makes no sense whatsoever. Why wouldn't you do that?
I like somebody else getting the wrath of Jody Mack instead of me.
Idiots.
I love that. I get it. I get a little break. I can take a little sip. Somebody else could take that.
I lose my mind every once in a while. And I'll give you one more thing I will lose my mind on. I guarantee you, because I'm on WIP Monday. And we love our streamers here, and they give us comments. If we started answering every single one of them, we'd never talk to each other. We just talk to the stream like our buddy Barrett Brooks likes to do. So not that we don't appreciate you guys who do stream and comment and the like. Thank you very much for doing so. Every once in a while, somebody will give me an idea that I'll bring up a question then for you, John. So please keep doing it. But we're not sitting here responding to your responses day in and day out when we do the show. But here's where I will lose my mind on Monday night after the Eagle game is over and done with. I hope the Eagles win. I'm absolutely, you want me on record? I'll do so right now. I'm taking the Eagles plus the 3.5. I'm not sure why they are more than a field goal underdog in this game. I think it's a stone cold toss-up game. I actually think the Eagles have a slightly better roster. If you factor in home field advantage, usually about a 3-point swing, I don't buy it. I think the Eagles are a better roster, a better team, better prepared. 2 first-time coaches, neither one of them CEO head coaches. Both will be calling plays for their.
Never happened, Jody. You don't have to keep saying it.
We'll be calling plays for their respective teams on Sunday. Here's what's going to happen. I know I'm going to get one call like this on Monday or Tuesday night on WIP, John. And I can't stand that Kevin Burkhardt. He was absolutely rooting for the Atlanta Falcons. That Olsen guy. Remember when we beat him when he was a Carolina? Remember when he was rooting again. He was rooting for the Atlanta Falcons. It's the most ludicrous thing ever.
Oh, yeah, I'm with you there. See, we got common ground here.
That's good. And there's a real easy way to fix it. Turn off your TV, turn up your radio. If you want guys who are seeing it through an Eagle perspective, Merrill Reese and Mike Quick will certainly do that for you. They'll give you the call that you want, that you need as an Eagle fan watching the game, give you the Eagle perspective. If you can't do that, if you're going to be out at a bar at somebody else's house, then don't call me and whine about the guys calling it on TV after the fact. Because here's what they're not doing. They're not seeing it through Eagle-colored glasses. And they're not supposed to see it through Eagle-colored glasses. They're supposed to be doing an objective third-party analysis of the game. And you don't see it that way. You don't want it that way. That's great. Turn on Mike and Merrill. They'll give it to you the way you want. But don't watch it on TV and then call me and go, I can't believe they get these guys to do Eagle games. And they openly root against the Eagles on TV. Please don't do that with me Monday or Tuesday.
I'm with you. I think the ironic part I've always pointed out, I don't think people realize, because, NFL Films is in Mount Laurel. I don't think they realize how many people doing these games are actual Eagles fans and local people. Number one. There are certain guys like, let's be honest. I mean, Troy Aikman and Tony Romo specifically have risen to the top of their profession, they're former Cowboys quarterbacks, so they're hated obviously by Eagles. They're also really good. That's why they rise to the level they did. But yeah, I always found it amusing that, there's so many local NFL films people that are just unabashed Eagles fans, and Eagles fans think the exact opposite. If anything, the Eagles have more people in their corner than any other team in the NFL when it comes to national TV broadcast. And by the way, they hide it. Most of them do a really good job, and try to be as objective as possible. But I always found it. I just thought, NFL films is thinking about Laurel. Do people not know that?
They do, but they don't care because they think that everyone should see things through Eagle-colored glasses. All right, Eagles did make a roster protection yesterday. You have the ability to protect guys on your practice squad so someone can't come in and pilfer them just before a game's going to happen. And they put a couple of guys on the protected list that I wanted your take. That I'm sure some of them, well, I think it's 2, are actually going to be elevated to the roster because you can do that in the NFL. You can quote unquote call up guys. Jordan Howard, John Hightower, Raven Clark, and Elijah Riley. No surprise with any of them. I guess we could go through the entire practice squad and say, ooh, why this guy instead of that guy? Hightower instead of someone else. What do you read into the 4 that they protected? Who do you think will be elevated for the game on Sunday?
Well, I think we talked about it a little bit last week. The Eagles all last year, they protected their max every week. They were one of the few teams who did. So it doesn't surprise me that they did it again. That's the way they do business.
And let me ask you a question, because you're more knowledgeable in this than I am. Why wouldn't you protect your max?
That's a good question.
If you're given a high number of 4, why wouldn't you protect all 4? Do you have to pay them more to protect them, or you're just keeping another team from taking you? Why would not every team in the league turn a list of 4 in every week?
I agree. It doesn't make sense to me. You got to do it by Tuesday. I don't know. Maybe people are too busy. I don't know. Maybe what it stems to me is they don't care. I think it makes a clear indication that, all right, if you want to pilfer this guy, we don't care. So certain teams do too. The guys they're going to probably elevate. The Eagles are always going to do their max. And by the way, you're right. I think that's a good thing. Doesn't hurt to protect the guys that you could project to be part of the roster down the road. I think for this week of those 4, the Elijah Riley is probably going to be elevated. We talked about Rodney McLeod. He's also a good special teams player. And Jordan Howard, to me, is probably going to be elevated to be that other piece of the puzzle at the running back position, that between the tackles, short yardage guy. Those would be the guys I think most likely. But you can, even John Hightower, if you need a special teams player, if you need a gunner. Because I talked about Cordero Patterson a little concern there. You typically don't have to worry about kickoff returners in the modern NFL. He's probably the lone exception. So maybe John Hightower. I would say LaRaven Clark is the one that isn't going to be activated for a couple reasons. He's still, coming off the Achilles. He probably still needs a little bit more time. But in an offensive line deficient league, it's good to protect the offensive lineman because somebody could pilfer him. I think they do a smart thing by protecting everybody they can every week.
One thing you said caught my attention. John Hightower, for his special teams capabilities, over J-Jaw? Wait a minute. Wasn't J.J. Arcega-Whiteside a killer special teams participant this spring, and that's why he's on the 53 to begin with?
Well, I think you can chuckle about both of them. But John at least has, significant speed. So
yes.
You could project him as being a gunner. I've never seen him do it successfully, but the one thing I talk about this coaching staff, and maybe they're doing the other work. We don't get to see the walkthroughs. But I got to tell you, Jody, they did not spend a lot of time on special teams. Now, maybe they're doing it in different avenues, as I said, where we don't get to see it. But I'm a little bit concerned about and not the specialists, more of the coverage teams. I'm like, they lost Rudy Ford. Craig James was their other gunner who was injured, and he's on the practice squad. They, for whatever reason, released him, maybe because of the injury, but he's back. I don't know. I don't see a lot for years. Chip Kelly again. Too many Chip Kelly references on this show. He brought Dave Phipp in here, and for a long time the Eagles they were at the top of this league special teams wise, and I think one of the reasons why was because they identified the Chris Maragoses of the world and the Brian Bremans of the world and the Najee Goods of the world, who were just good special teams players. And you probably didn't want to play in defense. Not probably. You didn't want to play defense. But they were really good special teams players. They don't do that anymore. They did it with Rudy Ford, but then they let Rudy Ford walk. In Jacksonville, by the way, is raving about Rudy Ford. Nobody cares about special teams right up until you do care about special teams, if you know what I'm saying. And when you give up the big return and you go, what's going on here?
Well, I think you kind of answered your own question there. I think that it has been de-emphasized because so few kicks are actually returned anymore. Special teams are four sections: kickoff return, punt coverage, kickoff coverage. Two of them have been minimized because everybody just kicks it into the end zone. There are so few.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Kickoff
Returns, I agree with you. But punt returns is still a big deal. And
the games that you're planning on, and two of them been now you're down to just two. You've cut in half the importance of the special teams. If you think, so what? They got to jog down underneath while the guy lets the ball go out of the back of the end zone. Anybody can do that.
And and I've said, I can't tell you how many people, and people say it here because the Eagles are playing the games with who's going to be the kick returner, who's going to be the punt returner. And people ask me who's going to be the kick returner. And my standard answer, and I'm not trying to be a jerk, is who cares? Who cares? The only reason you care, if the ball is kicked 3 yards in the end zone, the Eagles are taking it to 25. This is literally the only week where you should care, because if you kick it 5 yards in the end zone, the guy's going to take it out. If you kick it 7 yards out of it, he might take it out. If you kick it 9 yards deep, he might take it out. So it might be an issue this week. You're right. Overall, who cares? Because they are going to.
That's why the present coaching staff aren't paying as much attention as you're used to getting ready for the season. All right, Martin Frank's going to join us in just a second. One question before we go to break. The Eagles' two gunners on at least punt team on Sunday are going to be who, Johnny Mac?
Ooh, let me think about that over the break.
Okay, we'll take a break and then we'll punch it. And if you don't know, I guarantee you Martin Frank does. So you better know when we come back, McMullen.
Yeah.
It's McMullen and McDonald here with you on Birds 365.
Hey, Eagles fans, if you're a subscriber to the JAKIB Media YouTube channel, you are already registered to win a pair of season tickets for the upcoming season. That's right, you could win a pair of season tickets for the upcoming 2021 season just for being a subscriber. If you're watching and you're not a subscriber, do it now. Subscribe to the JAKIB Media YouTube channel right now. What do you need to do? Subscribe right now.
As a hard-working American, you've never experienced how tough life can be until now. A catastrophic injury while working on the job. A personal injury from someone else's negligence. Turned away by other law firms in the region who didn't bother to learn your story. It's time to meet the Fritz & Bianculli Law Firm and managing partner Brian Fritz. Badly injured? Call the Fritz & Bianculli Law Firm. Find out why they say, "We got this."
The International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local Union 98, is a proud sponsor of The Labor Show with J. Doc and Krause every Saturday night from 6 till 8 p.m. IBEW Local 98's highly trained and superbly skilled electricians are the best in the business, setting the highest safety standards in the electrical industry. So when you're planning your next industrial, commercial, or residential project, choose an IBEW Local 98 union contractor. Learn more at ibew98.org.
The savoring taste of a good bag of beef jerky is so enjoyable at any time of the day, as long as you can find it. Here's what we suggest. Pure Bull beef jerky is our answer, and soon it will be yours. Locally produced in the Philadelphia region, this high-quality, healthy protein snack is easy to secure. Go to steersnacks.com, and you'll see hot garlic, tropical heat, Pure Bull dry rub, and our favorite, Huck and Fod. What's that? Huck and Fod. Go now to steersnacks.com.
I get scared sometimes.
Of a lot of things.
Joining in.
Decisions.
The dark.
The dark.
But I once heard someone say,
But as I always say,
it's okay to be afraid.
as long as you face the fear.
And keep moving forward.
Wherever you are in life, count on the name trusted in insurance for over 80 years. Independence Blue Cross.
On the field of life, First Trust Bank is there for you.
Champions on three. 1, 2, 3.
Because Philadelphia dreams deserve a Philadelphia bank.
Birds 365 here on the JAKIB YouTube channel. We are just days away from the start of the 2021 Philadelphia Eagles season. Here to give us a before it gets underway look is our buddy from down in Delaware. You read him every single day, either online or if you're still grabbing the newspaper. God bless you if you do. I still like to. I don't get out often enough to do so. But if I see one, I just feel the need to grab it and see if I can get ink on my hands. Our buddy Martin Frank from the Delaware News Journal here with us on Birds 365. How are you, Martin?
I'm doing all right. How about you guys? Great to be here, as always.
Yeah, thanks for joining us, Martin. And for those who don't, Martin lives in Pennsylvania, by the way. Don't give him that Delaware cred anymore, by the way. But now he's obviously, shush about that. I do want to talk about, obviously, week one, very big week. Martin Frank, the initial game in the Nick Sirianni era. You got to see the head coach pandering a little bit in his Phillies gear yesterday with the green T-shirt underneath, by the way. Nick should have let that out. But your thoughts on this opening game and going down to Atlanta against another rookie head coach, and the fact that Nick has talked about this uncertainty, he thinks he has an advantage. Well, all of a sudden he's going to face a rookie head coach with, in theory, an advantage.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting because I don't think we really got a chance to see what Nick Sirianni has in store. I mean, during the whole preseason, I mean, most of the starters barely played, if at all. And when they did play, I mean, everything was kept pretty close to the vest. It was very basic. You didn't see Jalen Hurts running around, design runs or RPOs or anything like that. You didn't see Miles Sanders as a receiver. You barely saw Miles Sanders at all. And, you didn't see a whole lot from the wide receivers. I think Devontae Smith played one half of the second game. He had a couple balls thrown his way, but, very basic type of patterns and stuff. So yeah, I mean, Nick Sirianni's wanting to keep that element of surprise going in the first game, and, he has. But, after Sunday, everybody has the same tape. Everybody knows what he's going to be about and stuff. So, the element of surprise might last one game, but that's about it. After Sunday, everybody will have a pretty good idea of what Nick Sirianni's offense and defense, under Jonathan Gannon will look like.
And Martin, the Eagles handled their usage of the personnel in their 3 preseason games and the all-important joint practices, which you guys got to see, but none of us got to see. But we trust you guys when you report on them. Eagles made it sound like these were the most important days of the Eagle calendar, those 4 days against the Jets and the Patriots, which supposedly they won all 4. We'll see.
Unbeaten. Banner is going up week 2
joint
before
practices,
San Francisco.
I don't think they're going to hang a banner, but you never know. They may. You're going to keep an eye out when you're down there at the facilities. We're going to judge them on Monday on how they produce, right? Not on how healthy they stayed, because they are relatively healthy going into the game, and then we'll have a read on them coming out of the game. If somebody goes down with an injury, I guarantee you at least one guy is going to say, if he had gotten more reps in preseason, maybe he doesn't get hurt, right, wrong, or indifferent. That might be a stance someone takes. Yes. Is Nick Sirianni ready for all this stuff? Is he up to being second guessed? Because it's going to happen as soon as the game's over, unless they win 45-0 and come out completely healthy.
Yeah, there are like 2 ways this can go, right? I mean, they come out in the first game and they have like a Chip Kelly type of game back in 2013 where they just like ran roughshod over Washington to the point where I remember that game vividly. I mean, they were so tired. The Washington defenders were so tired. They were like faking injuries just to get a stoppage in play. So, obviously if it goes like that, everyone's going to think Nick Sirianni's a genius and the greatest coach ever. And the Eagles are not going to lose the game. But, like you said, if for example, Brandon Brooks, were to get hurt or Miles Sanders pulled a hamstring or something like that, and then you're like, well, what was all this like non-practicing, shorter practices? What was all that for if these guys are getting hurt anyway? So, yeah, I mean, it could go either one of 2 ways. It could be like the greatest thing ever, or, he'll be second guessed like crazy on Monday.
And by the way, week 1, the first injury report shows up, Martin, and they're trying to manage Brandon Brooks to get to the game week 1. So when you're talking about over 30 players who have an injury history, it's always going to be a little bit of a concern. But one positive I love from Nick Sirianni yesterday, and I want to get your thoughts on this, when he was talking about Jalen Hurts, and he sort of mentioned, if I love a play, if Shane Steichen loves a play, Brian Johnson, and Jalen doesn't like it or doesn't feel comfortable with it, we ain't going to run it. I think that, to me, is a positive for Nick Sirianni. It seems like he's not going to be that coach, who pounds the square peg in the round hole. I'm looking for optimism here. Did you get the same read on that?
I did to an extent. I mean, that was kind of the thing with like, Carson Wentz. Doug would often say, we talk with Carson and, we go over plays and he'll make suggestions and everything like that. Well, I mean, obviously last year it didn't turn out so well. And, there were reports that, Carson was kind of freelancing, going on his own. I mean, I don't think that would be the case with Jalen Hurts. Number one, I mean, he's only started 4 games before he's got a new coach. But I think to some extent, I do agree with you in the sense that, Nick and Shane Steichen and Jalen Hurts and Brian Johnson, the quarterback coach, have all gone over and over, for months, basically, what kind of offense they want to run, what kind of plays they want to run for Jalen Hurts, what kind of plays will maximize his strengths. And I'm sure there was some give and take. I'm sure Jalen was like, well, yeah, this play would obviously work really well for me, but maybe not so much this play. And yeah, from that point of view, I think it's a good thing what Nick was saying yesterday. But, I don't think Jalen Hurts is the kind of guy who just get carried away with power and say, well, no, we're going to run this play, I'm going to overrule you or anything like that. I don't think it would ever get to that kind of situation. I think Jalen Hurts is smart enough, and I think the coaches are smart enough to realize, yeah, we can give Jalen Hurts some kind of leeway, but we're not going to we're not going to turn it all over to him. I mean, we're the coaches. This is our system. And, he's got to work within that. But I think there will be some give and take. And I think it'll be a better situation than maybe the last year with Carson and Doug Peterson.
Martin, I certainly want to get your take. But if, John, you want to jump in with a comment, we got off on a tangent. Don't know if you watched the first hour here, Martin. We got off on a tangent on CEO coaches. I didn't get to this with John. My bad. Howie Roseman yesterday on WIP kind of took a backhanded shot at Carson Wentz, saying that, yeah, you know, we did draft Jalen Hurts in the second round, maybe because every playoff game we played for the last several years, we've had to use our backup quarterback. He has been reserved at taking shots at Carson Wentz since he went out the door, but kind of took one yesterday. What do you make of that?
I found it pretty interesting. I mean, you know, Carson, obviously with the injury history and everything, they've had to use their backup quarterbacks. But I mean, I think that's a general statement around the NFL. I mean, if you don't have a good backup quarterback and your starter gets hurt, you know, you're pretty much sunk. I mean, look at Green Bay with Aaron Rodgers. If anything were ever to happen to him, I mean, you know, obviously now they have Jordan Love in the first round, but, you know, the point is there's a big drop off from the starting quarterback to the backup quarterback. And, you know, the Eagles have always kind of like invested pretty heavily in that, whether it was, you know, Nick Foles before that with the Super Bowl run and the playoff runs in the next few years. But, you know, I don't know if it was like a shot at Carson per se, as much as saying, yeah, we need a good quarterback, and that's why we drafted Jalen Hurts in the second round. And when you look at it, I mean, drafting Jalen Hurts was kind of like a cheap alternative to signing, you know, like a $10 million backup. So I don't know.
I'm with you. And they did the same thing this year with Gardner Minshew, bringing him in to be the cost-effective backup in theory moving forward, at least for a couple years. So I've always called it a vacuum pick from Howie. I think it makes perfect sense in a vacuum. But I do, you know, I do think he didn't learn from the mistake. Look, we can look at it in hindsight now and say that affected Carson Wentz. So either they think Jalen Hurts is just stronger minded, or they don't care, or they're just going to bring in quarterbacks. And that's not the philosophy of a lot of teams in this league who want competent backup quarterbacks, but they're part of their job description is support the starter, not, you know, be Mr. Nick Sirianni competition, just support the starter. Which way do you think is the proper way to go?
I would say support the starter. I mean, you want a guy like, you know, for example, Joe Flacco, to come in and be able to like mentor Jalen Hurts in a sense, you know, give him pointers and stuff like that. That's why, like, you know, Chase Daniel is still in the NFL. He's thrown maybe 10 passes in his career. He's
business Hall of Famer. Our friend Andrew Brandt would call him. Yeah, business.
Yeah, he's made like $100 million or something like that in his career and thrown maybe 10 passes. I mean, I'm probably exaggerating a little bit on those numbers, but you know, it's not far off. I mean, and the reason why coaches love him is because, you know, he supports the quarterback. He's like an extra quarterback coach in the room. And I'm not saying that's always the best thing, because obviously if Chase Daniel has to play, your season's pretty much over. But at the same time, I mean, you know, you look at the starters that he's been with, and they've all gotten better under his tutelage. So, yeah, I mean, that's kind of like the extent that you want to have a backup quarterback, you know, to be able to kind of support the starter, to be able to, like, you know, point out things even during the game. Like, you know, if Jalen Hurts throws a bad pass and they come off the field on third down, you know, maybe Joe Flacco will go up to Hurts and say, all right, what were you looking at here? Why did you do that? I mean, you should have done this, this, and this. I mean, and sometimes that has a lot more effect than, let's say it's coming from a screaming quarterback coach or offensive coordinator saying, totally missed the play, you know? Yeah. So I think there's some value in that, definitely.
Here's where this is the second time I'm going to play NFL team owner today. I did it now in number one with John. I'll do it again. You want a $150 million contract? Look me in the eye as I tell you this. We're going to bring in good backup quarterbacks. They may or may not support you. I'm supporting you by giving you a $150 million contract. Suck it up when we bring in a good backup quarterback. You're not going to be whining about this. You're not going to lose your mind like Carson Wentz did when you signed this $150 million contract. We bring in a good backup quarterback. Are you? If you can't look me in the mind, then I take the $150 million contract. I rip it.
I mean, that's probably one of the most stunning things that happened last year. I mean, just the way, it was obvious it affected Carson Wentz, and it was obvious that it kind of led to his downfall. And yeah, I mean, like you said, all the signs were there. I mean, they gave him that $150 million contract. They said, you're our franchise quarterback. And still he felt threatened by drafting Jalen Hurts in the second round. And it just didn't make any sense. And I don't understand that. I mean, I didn't think that was kind of like what Carson Wentz was all about. I mean, I know Jalen Hurts isn't about that. I don't think he cares that they brought in Joe Flacco, that they traded for Gardner Minshew. I mean, Jalen Hurts is obviously in a different situation because he's not yet the franchise quarterback, and he pretty much has this season to prove it. But if Jalen Hurts is a strong character guy, which all indications are that he is, then he's going to go out and try to prove that he deserves to be that franchise quarterback, and they can use the 3 first-round picks next year on bolstering other positions instead of like maneuvering to get a franchise quarterback. And, that's the way Jalen Hurts should be approaching it. He's not competing against Flacco or Gardner Minshew. He's competing against the 2022 draft pick, or he's competing against a trade for, I don't know. I'll throw out Deshaun Watson. But probably
throw him out there. Throw him out there. Now, I think you're right, by the way, Martin. As far as personality, Jalen Hurts isn't going to be affected like Carson Wentz was affected. But I'm gonna try to get back in the good graces of my host, who I got fired up earlier, by giving you the hypothetical. Here's the problem this time around. Eagles get off to a bad start. How quickly do the fans start clamoring for Gardner Minshew? Because now they have an option. You've given them an option. So if the Eagles start poorly, you have this different avenue that Howie Roseman opened, that I think this team isn't good at looking down the road, down the possible hurdles that moves like this can cause. Because let's face it, Martin, Gardner Minshew is more accomplished than Jalen Hurts. He's the guy with the stats of the passer rating and the touchdowns, granted on a bad football team, but fans aren't going to put that context in there. They're going to say, we got a guy here who proved he can play a little bit. So if we're 0-4, say, does that start?
Well, let me throw this back at you in this sense. If the Eagles are 0-4 and Jalen Hurts is playing awful, I mean, isn't that more a reflection on Nick Sirianni and the coaches?
Oh, sure.
And
yeah.
Howie Roseman and the team he's got? I mean, if you're thinking at 0-4, the only fix you can do right now is change quarterbacks. I mean, you're obviously in deeper trouble than just, Jalen Hurts at quarterback. I think that's kind of like a bad statement on the whole team, basically. It's a bad statement on the coaching staff. It's a bad statement on Howie Roseman and Jeffrey Lurie for saying, who is this guy, Nick Sirianni, that you hired? I mean, he can't do anything, and they're awful. I mean, you look at it, the Eagles have had, 6 months, I guess, since April, 5 months, to prepare for this moment. And with Jalen Hurts as a quarterback, they've known that all along. And if they can't come up with some kind of plan to, make him effective, then that's on them. I mean, Gardner Minshew is not going to be the answer. If they're 0-4,
no, I agree.
Out Jalen Hurts and putting in Gardner Minshew, well, they're
real
not
quick, Martin,
for weeks. Yeah,
real quick though. Here's the problem. You could be 0-4 and not be terrible. If you lose that first game to Atlanta, that's the winnable game. You have San Francisco's a good football team. Dallas, we don't know, but it's on the road. And then who's week 4? Is that Kansas City or
no? Kansas City's 5. Who's it?
Tampa Bay is week 4.
Oh, there you go.
So
good luck against the Bucs.
We could be 5 weeks at Kansas City on top. That's a really difficult early part of the schedule if you don't get things done in Atlanta. So you can, in theory, play pretty well and just lose to good football teams, exception of the Falcons. And people will still be clamoring because there's another option, is what I'm trying to say. Or am I overstating that?
You might be overstating it at 0-4. I mean, if it's 0-8, I think that's a different story. But I think, like you said, I mean, the schedule's pretty tough at first. And I think the Eagles are a team where they're going to play better as the season goes along. I mean, it might be a rough start for them, but, they finish up with the 5 NFC East games, division games, and they might not have a very good record going into like November and December. And, like you said, if they're in those games and they're pretty competitive in most of them, I don't think fans would be, that distraught or saying, oh, we got to change everything around. But at the same time, I mean, if they're getting blown out pretty early, if they lose to Atlanta and then come home and get blown out by San Francisco and then, go to Dallas for that Monday night game, and you're looking at 0-3, and two of those games have been pretty non-competitive. I mean, there are going to be some questions, obviously, and they got to make some kind of adjustment in that case. But if it's competitive and stuff, come back, and then they have like Kansas City and Tampa Bay, both games at home, both against Super Bowl. The Super Bowl teams from last year. I mean, I don't think people are expecting, a big win, although I think isn't Tampa Bay games on a Thursday night and Tom Brady on a short week.
Yeah.
Tom Brady on a short week, having to travel, you never know.
Let me correct. I tried to correct John. John was right. Kansas City is the 4th game. Tampa's the 6th game. So, yeah, if they're 0-3, but they lose 37-34 to Mahomes, are you going to get Jalen Hurts out of there? He's 0-4. What are you talking about? He threw 4 touchdown passes. He almost went mano-a-mano with Mahomes. He lost the game. So there's more to it than just the record. That's the number one determining factor, but there are other factors as well. One other thing. Sounding like Bob Groats here, the Delaware competition. He really did go 0-8, John. Martin went 0-8. Groats is our favorite. He sees the doom and gloom of the season coming this year. Let me hit you with a hypothetical. Oh, tell me Martin's not freezing on his side. Still there. Hypothetical. We'll use the numbers 11-6. If the Eagles are 11-6 at the end of the season, the main reason why is going to be what, Martin? What is going to kick in? What's going to be good for the Eagles? Eagles are going to be 6-11, and it's going to be a long season again. The main reason is going to be what? What do you see as the major determining factors, upside, downside to the Eagles season?
So
we got Wi-Fi.
You were kind of breaking up a little bit. So what would be the determining factor if they go 11?
Working on 11-6, 6-11. Either 6-11 or 11-6. What's the reason that it's going to go real well for the Eagles? What's the factor that's going to push them down to another poor season at 6-11?
All right. I would say what would go well would be Jalen Hurts and the wide receivers like Jalen Reagor takes off, Devontae Smith takes off, and you have really good, there's really good and the offensive line as well. But 6-11, that means there are a lot of injuries. The schemes aren't very good. Jalen Hurts isn't running well. The defense is terrible. And you start questioning, Jonathan Gannon as defensive coordinator. A guy's 35 years old. What does he know? Why didn't they hire like a Jim Schwartz or even like Atlanta has with Dean Pease? A veteran type of guy who knows the defense. So all those things, it could go one way or the other. I mean, you could look at this coaching staff as being a genius if they end up finding a way to go 11-6, or you can look at them being overmatched if they go 6-11, and you got to get yourself a new quarterback next year.
All right, Martin, we got to talk about the Falcons a little bit. And read Martin at DelawareOnline.com. Make sure you check out his coverage in advance of week 1. Everybody's got good players in this league, but the Falcons don't look like the best team on paper. But if you do look at them, what are you fearful of? If you're the Eagles defensive coordinator, if you're JG, if you're Nick Sirianni looking at the Atlanta defense, what players are you worried about?
I'm worried about number one, Kyle Pitts. He's a rookie tight end, and he's supposed to be like revolutionize the whole position. And I could see a guy like that, 6'6", 240 pounds, runs like a 4'4", 4'5", 40. I could see him just terrorizing the middle of the Eagles defense. I mean, I think he's going to be a tough guy for the Eagles to contend with. And you got a quarterback in Matt Ryan who, can pretty much make any throw. I mean, there isn't element of surprise that the Falcons went out with Jalen Hurts, because Matt Ryan doing it for so long, and he's one of the best to do it for so long. So what you're going to get from Matt Ryan. You're going to get a pretty darn good quarterback, and a guy like Kyle Pitts I could see him having a big first game. Those tight ends have always killed the Eagles. I go back, last year you saw that George Kittle. You saw that with, he's not a tight end anymore, but he was in college, and Chase Claypool and everything. And a guy like Kyle Pitts, I could just see him being really tough to handle. That would be the one thing I would be worried about if I was Jonathan Gannon on defense.
Martin, great stuff. We appreciate you coming on. We're going to tap into you plenty during the season. And yes, we won't put you in the category of Bob Groats. He is the most negative guy we have on the show. Feel free to. No, we're not going to do that to you. Appreciate it greatly of you joining the show today. We'll talk to you again soon, Martin. John will see you before you know it. Yeah, Martin's freezing up. Unfortunately, that's what you get when you're streaming shows. You are at the mercy of the strength of the connection. And I think we probably missed a couple of Martin answers, but it was worth working our way through it because Martin Frank does a great job covering the team. All right, he's Johnny Mac. I'm Jody Mac. We come back. We still got about 10 minutes to go before we put a bow on the show, leading into Eagles Week 1 against the Atlanta Falcons here on Birds 365.
Hey, Eagles fans, if you're a subscriber to the JAKIB Media YouTube channel, you are already registered to win a pair of season tickets for the upcoming season. That's right, you could win a pair of season tickets for the upcoming 2021 season just for being a subscriber. If you're watching and you're not a subscriber, do it now. Subscribe to the JAKIB Media YouTube channel right now. What do you need to do? Subscribe right now.
As a hard-working American, you've never experienced how tough life can be until now. A catastrophic injury while working on the job. A personal injury from someone else's negligence. Turned away by other law firms in the region who didn't bother to learn your story. It's time to meet the Fritz & Bianculli Law Firm and managing partner Brian Fritz. Badly injured? Call the Fritz & Bianculli Law Firm. Find out why they say, "We got this."
The International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local Union 98, is a proud sponsor of The Labor Show with J. and Krause every Saturday night from 6 till 8 p.m. IBEW Local 98's highly trained and superbly skilled electricians are the best in the business, setting the highest safety standards in the electrical industry. So when you're planning your next industrial, commercial, or residential project, choose an IBEW Local 98 union contractor. Learn more at IBEW98.org.
The savoring taste of a good bag of beef jerky is so enjoyable at any time of the day, as long as you can find it. Here's what we suggest. Pure Bull beef jerky is our answer, and soon it will be yours. Locally produced in the Philadelphia region, this high-quality, healthy protein snack is easy to secure. Go to steersnacks.com, and you'll see hot garlic, tropical heat, Pure Bull dry rub, and our favorite, Huck and Fod. What's that? Huck and Fod. Go now to steersnacks.com.
I get scared sometimes.
Of a lot of things.
Joining in.
Decisions.
The dark.
The dark.
But I once heard someone say,
But as I always say,
it's okay to be afraid.
as long as you face the fear.
And keep moving forward.
Wherever you are in life, count on the name trusted in insurance for over 80 years. Independence Blue Cross.
On the field of life, First Trust Bank is there for you.
Champions on three. 1, 2, 3.
Because Philadelphia dreams deserve a Philadelphia bank.
Coming down the home stretch of another Birds 365 episode. Subscribe to the channel. I don't want to get off. I'm going to do this professionally, John. It would be advantageous. It would be wise for you to subscribe to the JAKIB Media YouTube channel. If you haven't heard the promo, we're giving away Eagles season tickets. To be eligible, thanks to those of you who have already subscribed, you are already eligible. If you haven't yet, what the hell are you doing watching the channel? If you're not going to get nuts, I'm sorry, my apologies. Please subscribe to the channel.
I like when the vitriol is aimed at someone else, Jody.
That would be the people watching the show right now who haven't subscribed yet, that are just kind of nitwits, but I'm not going to call them nitwits, even though they are. J-Mac, we've got football tonight. Bucks,
yeah, how about
Cowboys.
That? I almost
getting ready
forgot.
for it. Very much looking forward to it. No radio shows, no nothing. I'm just going to sit back, football fan, watch TV tonight. Cowboys don't have a chance against the Bucks tonight, do they?
I would think not. The Cowboys can score some points. I think there's a lot, is Dak Prescott going to be healthy? Zach Martin's probably not going to play. I'm not sure if he's ruled out.
Oh, I think I read this morning he's officially ruled out. Yeah.
So that obviously hurts. That's one of the best offensive guards in this league. And Tampa Bay's Tampa Bay. They're the Super Bowl champions. Bruce Arians has got everybody. Their 100% vaccination rate already. We're talking game one, 100% team against losing one of your best players. That might be a bigger issue this year than it was last year on certain teams. Tom Brady. I'm going to start going down this road, Jody. I haven't done it to date. I'm going to start. It's got to happen sooner or later. I think age is going to catch up to Tom Brady this year at some point, but not week one.
I've only done that like 8 times in the last 8 years. So.
I haven't done it yet, but it's got to happen. It's got to happen.
Oh, I have, and I will readily admit it was a little on the wishful thinking side because I want to see Tom Brady
for obvious reasons.
Lose to Father Time. It's got to happen at some point. So why not foresee it before it does happen? And then, like I said earlier in the show, when you're wrong, you have to admit that you're wrong. Some people do a great job at dodging that. I try not to. Yeah, I've been wrong when I've gone down the road. If Tom Brady's finally going to get old this year, he probably won't again. But I'll optimistically believe that's the case. Just not tonight against the Cowboys.
Yeah,
and I think
not week one. Probably week 9, week 10. The aches and pains are going to start catching up to him.
Yeah,
probably not.
Played all of last year with a torn MCL that we heard nothing about until after he threw the Super Bowl trophy in the river down there in Tampa. And then we found out. I think he did it in 3rd grade, as a matter of fact, and he's been playing with it ever since. And I wanted to bring this up with Martin Frank. Shame on me, ran out of time. His thing went a little wonky on him, his Wi-Fi. But the Vikings, you're a former Viking guy. Their offensive lineman signed a big deal during
a lot of
yesterday.
money.
$92.5 million, five-year deal. Is Brian O'Neill that good a right tackle? I know I am the guy who always roots for the guys who don't get paid. And there are certain positions in certain sports where you get paid that much more just because you play that position, which I don't think is necessarily fair. I know it's kind of right and just, and they figured it out, and that's why they do it. But you can be better than anybody else at a certain position, which means you should be the bar set who gets a lot of money. Right tackle is one of those positions. Lane Johnson's done okay for himself here in Philadelphia. Is Brian O'Neill that good a tackle that he's getting close to $20 million a year to play right tackle?
Yes and no. He's a good player. He's a really good player. I would, if you're doing right tackles, he'd probably be right in that 8, 9, 10 range, top 10 player at the position, but certainly not at the top of the position. Minnesota's had a lot of problems on the offensive line. He's been really their only good player. So that plays into it as well. They're a little bit, I think, desperate to hold on to, the one offensive lineman they've been able to cultivate and find over the past couple of years. So he's a really good player, probably getting paid a little bit too much. I think his number 2, when you look at the landscape of right tackles in this league, doesn't belong in that rarefied air. But as I talk about all the time, Jody, it's timing and circumstance. You're up, You're going to try to set the bar or come as close to it as possible. Really, the comparison here, Lane Johnson is probably a little peeved off, but I think the bigger comparison is Dallas Goedert because of what's going on at tight end. Dallas Goedert's a perfect example. Dallas Goedert's like the Brian O'Neill of tight ends. Really good player, not in the top tier of the players at the position, but he's going to get paid like it because that's how the NFL works.
Being up for the guy, due for the contract at the right time can get you a lot of cash. All right. You're going to get Kratz with us tomorrow? We got to get Ed Kratz on before the season starts, right? He is our most distinguished guest.
He is.
We've had him on more than anybody else. You're going to be able to you got any pull with him?
I do have some pull, and I don't think he's going to be able to do tomorrow because he's got to move in his son to a new apartment in New York City. So maybe I'll ask. Maybe he's not doing it till later in the afternoon. But I know he's not going to practice because he's got to do that. So he might be out of the loop tomorrow.
I thought for sure we are going to have Kratz, but if he's got more important thing to do than coming on Birds 365, we can understand that. All right. I do want to say this before we wrap up today's show. We lost a really good Philadelphia Eagle fan last night. As I was on WIP, I found out from my producer, Mike Angelina, who was also Big Daddy Graham's producer for many years on WIP, that we lost Big Daddy last night. Big Daddy had some health issues a couple of years ago. He had an issue where he had a bleed into his spine, and it relegated Big Daddy to a wheelchair over the last several years of his life. He had some other issues, including cancer survivor previously. It became known to me that Big Daddy had passed last night, and we decided, Mike and myself, that we weren't going to say anything because the family had not made an announcement. They did this morning on the morning show. Ava Graham, part of the WIP morning show, was off this morning because Big Daddy passed at some point yesterday or last night. He was a Philadelphian through and through, and a diehard Eagle fan, a 4-for-4 guy who loved all of the teams here in town, but wasn't afraid to call any of the teams on the carpet when he thought they were bad. I had the great pleasure of working with Big Daddy for years at WIP. I had the great pleasure of watching him perform as a stand-up comedian. I had him on my show a lot. He would, I would do his show and stick around. The quick, funny aside to Big Daddy. He and I would work back to back. I would get off the air at 2:00. He would come on at 2:00. And you're supposed to hand it off to the next show so that he came on right at 2:00. Many times Big Daddy Graham would not get on the air till like 2:20. Why? Because he would come into the crossover, and he and I would start like you and I started in the first hour of the show, where we just yell at each other. Sometimes we laugh at each other, but we yell at each other too. We disagree, and he was just that kind of guy. And then I'd get up and lead the show, and Big Daddy, hey, thanks, Joe, appreciate it. And if he had to do 20 minutes less, because he and I did 20 minutes at the start of his show, that was perfectly fine with me. I'm dying to get home and go to bed. But if I got into a Big Daddy Graham, I love getting into it with him. It's much too early. I believe he's 68 years old. So we lost a true Philadelphia sports fan, legend, broadcaster, entertainer. Above all those other things, he was just a great dude and a great guy. Good family member. I met both his wife, and I certainly know his daughters and the like. Big Daddy, you will be missed. And hopefully the Eagles have a pretty good season going out the door to tip of the cap of a guy like Big Daddy Graham.
Yeah, such a unique personality, too. I love the fact that he was a stand-up comedian. He could bring that different sort of tint to it. I wasn't on with him very much because, you know me, Jody, I got that 12 o'clock cutoff, 11 o'clock cutoff. Really,
I'm lucky to get you on my show. You got no chance.
Overnight,
Big Daddy Graham had no chance at Johnny Mac.
Overnight guy. Now you start thinking about you're disappointed because he asked me to come on a bunch of times. And I'm like, I love the guy. I remember going to the movies when people went to the movies in Voorhees, and I hear this big voice, and there he is with the leather jacket. And I'm like, Big Daddy Graham, great guy. So sad. You're right. Tremendous. And more than anything else, I mean, that's everybody liked the guy. That's the best That's the thing you can say about anybody, because I can't say. I can tell you this: I can't even get my co-host to like me. Everybody loves Big Daddy Graham.
No, I love you, buddy. Just every once in a while, you're like a dog with a bone, and there is no winning that one. You always lose when the dog wants the bone. Yeah, I got to meet Big Daddy before I worked for him. He worked for a different radio station in town when we had a mutual friend, Neil Hartman, and got to hang and get to know Big Daddy Graham before we ever worked together. Just a stone cold class guy, and one funny individual. He certainly lived up to his reputation as a good stand-up comedian, and he was able to bring that onto the airwaves of WIP Low these many years. Our condolences to the entire Kadanis family, because I think most of you know that Big Daddy Graham was his quote-unquote stage name.
Yeah,
and
I got to get a stage name, by the way, Chad.
I think you need to do that at the start of your career. Your
too
career
late.
is actually developed a little bit here, buddy. Might be a little too late for that, but
You're right. You're right.
We will forever miss Big Daddy Graham, and again, our condolences to all his family, friends, and the like. All right, you and me tomorrow again. If you want to create a stage name tonight, and you want to give it to me before we start
Too
the
late.
show tomorrow,
You're right. You're always. Yeah,
I'll reference you however you want to be referenced, big guy. If you just tell me what it is.
I always, my Twitter handle's JF McMullen. I always said that, but it's too pretentious. I don't like people who do that. They do the initial thing. It's too pretentious.
But it did work for Big Daddy Graham. We surely understand that. All right, yes, John and I, or whatever John Snowden de Bloom is going to be tomorrow. You're going to have to tune in and find out here on Birds 365. We're right back at you 22 hours from now. And what are you doing? Get on JAKIB Media right now. Subscribe. What do you think? Never mind. We'll see you tomorrow.
If you missed any of today's show on the JAKIB Media channel, listen to the podcast on your way home. Available on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify.